Good. Thank you. And you?
Thank you so much to come here, to be here.
All good.
The show, yesterday I saw the new version, 8.1.2, I think so.
Yep.
And I saw the new web modeler beta. This is a spoiler. Please, it's yours.
Okay, cool. I have 30 minutes, right, Mauricio? I think so. Okay. Let me share my screen. Okay. Hope everyone can see my screen. If not, Mauricio, you have to interrupt me because just...
I saw.
Okay, cool. Very good. Okay, thanks all. So just quick introduction for those of you who don't know me. I'm Felix Müller. I'm the Director of Product Management for Camunda Platform 8. I'm looking after everything automation at Camunda, which means ZB, Operate, and then I look also at our managed service. So I'm working closely with our SAE team and console team. So kind of the first component that you see when you go on camunda.io. This one I'm responsible for as well. And then I'm working on the distribution of our platform from a platform perspective, right? So how do we deliver that platform to also our self-managed customers? I'm based in Berlin, Germany, joined Camunda around 6.5 years. So I have some history with the company, have been with Mauricio once in Brazil as well. I remember that time, Porto Alegre, that was pretty nice experience. I'm so happy to be here today with the community to speak about some Camunda product updates. When we do that, just a quick disclaimer that I have to show what is important, that everything that I say is kind of future looking, so it's kind of no guarantees on that this will happen. Like I present, as you know, in software engineering, things can go differently than we expect. Our targets and plans might change, so take that with a grain of salt. Also, I ask you when I talk about the 8.2 in a second, trying to not directly take screenshots and share that everywhere. For the things that I talk about 8.1, that's completely fine because that has been released already. But there are some things which we do not have published yet officially in there in my presentation. So that would be nice to not tweet about these. Just as a quick reminder, when we talk about Camunda roadmap, it's always for me important to actually remind everyone why do we exist, what is Camunda being used for, and our main motivation on building the product and what our vision is behind that. And these are the 4 most important automation problems that we're trying to solve with our product. So we are seeing we want to solve processes across different endpoints. We see the need for integrating of legacy systems. We still see that business and IT work quite often in silos. And we also see, and this is especially now true for Camunda Platform 8, the growing need for scalability and resilience. And this is why we have come up with this vision around the universal process orchestrator to orchestrate, automate, and transform your business. And that we do that based on complex process flows using this BPMN notation, which helps for collaboration with business and IT. We want it to be flexible, so that's the main focus of Camunda is on developers being flexible and easily integratable into your own infrastructure that you have, no matter which environment you are working with or which programming language or pipelines you're working with. And at the same time, we want to do that across all endpoints. And there will be some parts that you will find here also that are important when we talk about the roadmap. In terms of investments, we believe that the biggest improvements that we have to make over the next 12 to 18 months is something that we call solution accelerators. So these are the main investment areas where we believe we need to spend our research and development teams focused on. And these are the 6 that we believe are relevant at the moment. The first one is around everything developer productivity, to reducing the time to deploy a process. So instead of having to play around relatively long with properties panel and figuring out how I actually bring that process to production. We want to make that easier and faster, give more feedback when modeling and using things like the web modeler, for example. When looking at web modeler, what comes first to mind is the collaboration theme here in the middle. So bringing developers and designers together in one tool where they can work together with the same BPMN or DMN diagrams and work and collaborate in the same tool, and use that really across the whole life cycle then later on. That is kind of really the core that I always try to remind people of, this BPMN diagram that you create in the first step together with your teams. And this is also what you later on use when operating, when things go wrong, maybe in production, or later on in the last step when you improve your process. And it's a constant cycle of process improvement. And the third one around universal connectivity. So I touched on that, right? If you see at the bottom here, we want to orchestrate all the endpoints. And we want to make that as easy as possible to orchestrate these endpoints. And that's why there's a big focus at the moment at Camunda also on the one hand side, building out of the box connectors for common platforms and systems that exist. We do that on the one hand side on our own, investing in there. But on the other hand, we are also working closely with a couple of implementation partners already who will help us to provide more connectors quicker. There was some presentation also on CamundaCon, for example, recently, where Mauricio also attended, where Infosys talked, for example, about how they build their own connectors and how they share that with the community. And the second part in connectors is for me, which I find even more relevant, because connectors at first sounds always, okay, this is something I cannot change. That's something which I, as a developer, I just use, and then it's easy to maintain and to configure. But that's actually what we don't want connectors to be. We see that often then more as an integration framework. So we have something that we call a connectors SDK that we released recently. And this is supposed to make it rather easier for developers to connect with their own systems instead of making it harder, right? Many connectors that we see with some of the other vendors, they quite often make it difficult then to customize or extend. And that's something which we try to avoid with our connectors. Then on the bottom, on the right-hand side, low code, right? We have heard that term at CamundaCon. Some of you might have joined that remotely or directly in person as well. Is a term which we have avoided in the past a little bit, but we still think it has its relevance if it's used right and in the right mix together with pro code and low code, right? There's always this, I'm completely low code or I'm completely pro code, and somewhere in the middle is probably the right truth. You have to use as much as you want from it. And there are some areas where we believe in Camunda we do have room for improvement. So for example, in the area of human task orchestration, this is now where we set up a separate team to also look into this topic. And later down the next year, potentially also into how do I handle documents and data in an improved way. So there are some things coming as well in the future. And then on the far left side, this is something I'm focused on mostly personally. This is everything around cloud and operations. And this also includes scalability, performance, security of our platform, making it as reliable and resilient as it gets, more or less. So we working currently with a couple of customers of ours where we really have very, very high requirements when it comes to high throughput, but keeping low latency, and at the same time high resilience or availability. That means replication of data across multiple geographical regions. And this is why we built in the end ZB from scratch compared to Camunda 7, because we believe it can, from the architecture perspective, fulfill these requirements much better. But of course, it is always, there's room for improvement there. So that's why we invest in this area. And this topic also includes our managed service. And I will have on the roadmap a few things that I want to touch on. And then intelligence, right? This has been important with Optimize, and some of you know that probably, maybe even all, nice dashboards and certain business goals that I can define. We want to focus a little bit more on the business persona here, moving forward, making it easier for them to use the tool and maybe even create their own business goal alerts. So there are also some things coming. As a quick reminder, just some of you might still use Camunda 7 as well, or many, I assume actually. And just as a quick reminder, this is the stack when we talk about Camunda Platform 8. So we have a web and desktop modeler. Desktop modeler is also there to stay for the foreseeable future. So there are a lot of use cases. Do not be worried, only because we have this web modeler. We have the workflow engine, ZB under the hood here, source available, so you can also contribute. Just as a reminder, I always like to do that. It's at the moment Hacktoberfest ongoing. Maybe Mauricio can speak about Hacktoberfest later if you haven't yet. And that is a good opportunity in October to contribute and make small contributions to this open source available project on GitHub. There are certain issues that we highlighted with the help of labels where you can identify, this is an issue where I maybe can easily contribute to the core, to the heart of our workflow platform that you potentially work with on a regular basis. So that's, I think, a cool opportunity. There are some prizes or gifts later on to win for folks contributing as well. Just to give you two examples, we have some contributors at the moment contributing new BPMN symbols to Camunda Platform 8, which I find quite cool. So things like link events or escalation events they're working on right now. If you go to the ZB GitHub, you will see these as pull requests already. This just as a side note. Okay, we talked a lot about the platform. I am here for two main things I want to show you. One is what's new in the release 8.1 that just came out. And we're going to have a next 15 minutes to look at that. And also I want to give you a preview. Okay, what is coming after that, right? What is coming? What are our concrete plans for 8.2? And as I said, this is 8.2 is still something which is now work in progress. Certain things we have already started from engineering perspective, some not. So it can be still that things change down the line, but it gives you a rough idea in which way we are heading here. What is also important when it comes to releases, maybe just as a reminder for everyone in the community, we still release on a 6 months cadence. So minor releases of all of our components are being released in that. We have also then patch versions and previews at least on a monthly basis. And for everything that is kind of a process experience component like web modeler, console, and connectors, they're released continuously on our managed service. Cool. And with that, we come to the 8.1 release overview. As you can see, it's very similar to this solution accelerator slide I've showed a couple of slides ago, categorized into the different areas where we are investing. And with 8.1, it's actually a pretty cool release. We have made very good progress on very, very powerful operations capabilities. So process instance modification. Process instance modification allows you to move a token in a running process instance from one step to another one. And then operate, we have a new user interface for doing that. It's completely re-architected compared to Camunda 7 cockpit. So you can check that out. I will show you how you can do that later. And just play around with it, get a feeling how you like it. It's the first version of it, and I will show what is coming with 8.2 on the topic as well. What we also built is the capability to start a process instance at any position. So no matter at which point you want to start it, you can do that now. That is especially helpful if you are thinking about things like version migration as an example, where you want to migrate process instances from an older version to a new one. It's also important if you think about migrating running workflow instances or process instances from Camunda 7 or any other vendor to Camunda 8. So that's quite a good use case for starting instances anywhere. That's possible via API. We have 2 additional BPMN symbols. So thanks to the community, especially for the inclusive gateway. That was a community contribution, which was a very big one, and we are very happy about that. So the forking one is now implemented. And we also have then on our own implemented the termination event. There's also a recording from Philip, from one of our core engineers in ZB available, where you can see how you can actually implement new BPMN symbols. So he recorded that once in a hack session. So there he showed and demonstrated how we implement BPMN symbols in the engine, which I find quite interesting. Then on the core cloud side, and when we talk about cloud, that doesn't mean only our managed service, but it also means self-managed cloud. So if you want to run our platform on your own, in your own cloud, and we have now added official support for OpenShift and AWS EKS, and we will add the two other major cloud providers, GCP and also Azure, official support for that moving forward. So these are quite cool things. This is based on our Helm charts that we have. And then in the security side, we have now released the first version of our hot backups capabilities. That means you can take a snapshot of all the data of Camunda Platform 8 by just calling APIs in the different components. And especially for ZB, this is something quite special because you don't need to shut down anything. And even if you have multiple brokers of your cluster distributed across regions, for example, it's still capable of taking that backup without any downtime. Then for our managed service, we worked through the SOC 2 certification. There relatively soon, we expect to have the Type 1 certification. And this has certain implications, especially when it comes to what kind of procedures do we follow internally at Camunda when it comes to building software and maintaining and operating a secure and safe managed service. So that is, I think, a big step forward. It also affects, in the end, how we are building things. So it has also impact on the quality of the software. And then we have token-based authentication and operate and taskless, relying on our identity component. Okay, I won't go through Optimize in detail. I just want to highlight the modeling side of it and connectors still, and then we will move into future more. So what is important for connectors? We have more out-of-the-box connectors on our managed service, so Slack, G-Drive, Lambda, and SQS. And we also have now this connector SDK that I mentioned. So that's quite nice. That's just a recommendation to play around with the SDK. And on the other hand, from the modeling side, we have now for the first time a web modeler also self-managed as a preview. So you can install this web modeler that you know from our cloud offering on your own machine as well. Okay, I talked a lot about different features. For some of you, this might be self-explanatory, okay, what they all mean. For the others who are not so deep yet into Camunda, it's always hard to find the right balance. I recommend we have a blog post that it talks about everything new. Maybe I can quickly open that here as well. So here you find from our core engineering team all the updates around self-managed as well, and then updates around web modeler, what we have improved there, around context pad and organizing diagrams. You will see how we have added a process template picker as well into the managed service, how you can link from one core activity to the other one now way easier than it was before. Our new field editor, which makes it way easier to work with this expression language, which is not something everyone knows. I admit that as well. So for some folks, field is something completely new, and it's important to learn that as well. When working with Camunda, it's very, very powerful. As you can see here, what kind of functions are included in the expression language. And then, of course, also about new components, our connectors. And lastly, there's also information about process instance modification and how that looks like. If you want to see that in real life and in a live demonstration, I would recommend for you to either sign up on your own, right, on camunda.io. This is the page that you need. There's a 30-day trial. You can even go to camunda.com. So I think if you go to camunda.com and there's a try free button, this will lead you to this 30-day trial. So feel free to play around with it. You can, for 30 days, just create instances, processes, deploy them on your own cluster. You can also, if you don't want to fill in all your details, just use your GitHub or a Google account, and then there is kind of an onboarding flow that shows you how to use the product. I think it's quite nice. It doesn't take long, just an hour of time to go through all of the different components and playing with the onboarding guide. I recommend like maybe 30 to 60 minutes in total. And if you then still want to see it in live, presented by us, we have also a release webinar next week where different folks from the product management team will join. And we also have Niall coming. So most of you probably know him, our developer advocate. Quite nice to see that happening. So that will be on October 25th next week. So feel free to join that as well. And then looking at the time, I want to show you a little bit more about what's coming next. So we have successfully released. After the release is kind of before the release. That's what we always say. So we need to think about, okay, what are our plans? And as you can see, some of the things will be still either to be announced or I couldn't share them yet officially. But what I can share is here on the slide. So in the automation components, we are looking into decision evaluation via API. So at the moment in Camunda 8, you need a business rule task in the BPMN process to evaluate the decision. You don't have an API to evaluate DMNs separately. That's something we are building at the moment. Then we have deleting processes and decisions. So deleting one version of a decision that you defined and deployed manually. That's helpful for development, but also sometimes in production, you might have deployed the wrong version. You did something incorrectly. So it's kind of a powerful operations feature. Version migration, this is a really big topic for us, which will probably keep us also busy beyond 8.2. So the first version we expect in 8.2 to be there. That means you can migrate running process instances from one version of the process to the other one. So that is very powerful. At the moment in Camunda 8, you would have to do that manually by canceling instances and then starting them at any position via API. I mentioned that before. And then we are working heavily on BPMN symbols. And there, as I mentioned, the community is contributing a lot of symbols as we speak, which is cool. So I've seen contributions to the undefined task, link event. I think we have someone who's contributing. The escalation event, someone is contributing. We have someone who asked about signal, which is quite complex topic. So we are not sure yet if we will have that one. But there are also, some of them are still open, like data store object or data store and data object. There are missing, which would be helpful if someone contributed as well. And we, from our side, we want to spend time on compensation because we believe that this is actually a quite big topic. I think I have that here as a separate slide. So compensation is useful to compensate tasks in cases that they have to be rolled back. And for some of you who watched some of Bernd Rücker's talks, for example, they are also good when you're working with microservices and you're orchestrating microservice to apply the Saga pattern. Compensation events are especially helpful for that. And this is quite cool to be able to trust on that when you have these complex kind of transaction scenarios, I call them, this we talked about. Then on the other hand, on the core cloud, touched a little bit on that. Azure GCP is coming. Also, we have seen in the community more and more requests around running the stack on MacBooks. So we want to, on the newer MacBooks M1 and M2, They rely on the ARM architecture. We want to support that in our Docker images for development purposes, at least. We're also considering doing that for production, which will be helpful on AWS and nowadays also on GCP. They also have these ARM CPUs, which are a little bit more energy efficient as well. And there we consider, but it's a separate topic for us. Yeah, and then lastly, on the core side, there are two things right now that are more relevant. It's the hot backups for our managed service. So being able as an administrator to configure at which point of time snapshots are being taken of the clusters that you have in production without having any downtime. And on the other hand, token-based authentication also for ZB with our identity component and self-managed. And then lastly, for modular, we already have here the web modular GA, which we want to achieve. So as I mentioned, we released now the beta of that, and GA then means it's officially supported. It has all the installation guides for all of the Helm charts and all the different cloud providers as well. And that will be quite nice to see that. From the connector side, what is not here on the slide, what I can mention, there will be definitely more connectors coming out of the box. And on the other hand, our connector framework at the moment focuses on outbound connectors, so calling systems outside. And we are looking at the moment in prototypes at how do we handle inbound connectors. So when someone from the outside wants to call the process, that could mean, for example, I'm subscribing to a Kafka message queue or to RabbitMQ or ActiveMQ and so on. And then a process instance is being started based on an event or a message is being correlated. Things like that you can expect. And I think quite quick, quite many slides. I skipped now all of it. I think it's also fine to skip them. It was just to give you some introduction into what's going on at the moment at Camunda. So as you can see, we have quite busy schedule, and especially for the next 12 to 18 months, these will be the areas where we invest. To summarize that, I hope that most of the topics that you're interested in fall into one of these areas. BPMN support is something, of course, we will look into that in feature parity from Camunda 7 to Camunda 8, something we have also included there. But these are the solution accelerator areas that we find relevant. And with that, yeah, I think my time is also up. Maybe there's time for one or two questions if anyone has any.
Yeah, thank you. We have only one question here. Camunda 8 have plans to allow the deployment process via Flow Camunda Designer. We already have, no?
Yeah, that's maybe to clarify. So Camunda Designer, probably the person is Fernando is speaking about the web modeler or the desktop modeler, and both actually can deploy directly to Camunda 8 to a cluster, so that is possible.
Just use the secrets and another reference. No problem. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. We have you mentioned about the Oktoberfest. We have huge Oktoberfest here in south of Brazil. Yeah, so nice. And then I have some screens for you here, special. I will share my screen.
Okay.
For use, just to see the new version. The new version here. I already use, how can I say, how can I switch my Docker here? Already using 8.1.2. Thank you so much to make this available.
Yeah. Nice. Good to see.
Please tell me a little bit about the community contribution about this element, please.
Yeah, so this, the inclusive gateway, right? This allows you to activate one or multiple paths after the gateway. And we received the contribution at the beginning for both the inclusive gateway, the forking one, and also the joining one. And we made it possible. We collaborated with the contributor a lot. So that took actually a couple of weeks. And the forking one is now already implemented. We are also looking at having then the joining one being implemented. But it's a really big contribution, so we are very happy about that. Maybe just to show that quickly, Mauricio, if I can once more quickly share my screen.
Yes.
There is, if you go to, I need to click.
This is
If you go here on the ZB repository,
Yeah.
you can have at the label Hacktoberfest. So if you go for the first time to this page here, to ZB, then you go into issues, and then you can filter for Hacktoberfest. And there you will find all the issues that are
Awesome.
yeah, that will be part of Hacktoberfest. I can share this link also if you like once more, and there you can see people are implementing also more around script tasks. Here would be the inclusive gateway. Someone is implementing link events, so you can see in our pull requests at the moment that we are here working with the community. For example, as it Gable is quite active, or Scalo as well.
Yeah, thank you. Amazing. I have a huge message for you from Rosana, my wife.
Okay, cool.
She's inviting you to come to Porto Alegre again.
Yeah, that would be nice. Thanks,
Thank
Rosanna.
you.
Have a good day. Okay.
In the last question. Recommended steps for migrating from Camunda 7 to Camunda 8.
Yeah, that's actually a good one. So it's the first important step, I think, and try using external tasks already in Camunda 7 is our recommendation. Avoid using a lot of expressions inside of your process diagram. That will make it a little bit easier to transfer to Camunda 8. And then it's actually there are some on our documentation. There is a migration documentation that helps you, a guide that helps you to understand what kind of steps are necessary. And then it's just replacing a little bit of code. From my perspective, even if you have many external tasks, it's not too much work. Yes, it takes you a couple of days to replace these external workers with the new kind of the methods and the APIs, how they are being used. But it's relatively straightforward. So there's the Spring Boot client for Camunda 8 as well. And it's kind of the same way like in Camunda 7. The APIs are called a bit differently. Yeah, but it is some effort. I agree. It's definitely effort.
Okay. Thank you so much, Felix. You will have a busy agenda. And then thank you so much in name of the community users here. We loved your presentation. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mauricio. Have a good day.
Have a good day.